friends, welcome back to another episode of Ask Leah as part of our Areas of Expertise series. I am here today with Leah Hemming of Hemming Sexual Wellness Clinic. And Leah, tell us a little bit of your credentials.
Well, I have been a nurse since 1998-ish, and I'm a nurse practitioner since 2016. And since, 5 or 6 years, I have been running a sexual wellness clinic. Started it initially at a cancer center to help patients deal with changes that happen to their bodies and their minds after cancer care. And then I've branched out on my own for the past several years.
Cool. That kind of leads us perfectly into the first question. Why did you choose a career in sex education?
Well, actually, okay, so I've been asked this several times, why sex? And I want to say, first and foremost, why not? I did my senior project in grad school on sexual dysfunction of chronically ill patients. And so, but really, if you go to the core and the root of Leah, I likely ended up in the field of sexual medicine because I was raped from age 0 to 12, 13-ish. We were raised in a household with pedophiles. I have had 2 family members in and out of jail several times for said rapes. Probably my core passion, without even realizing it, is to bring awareness to this topic, bring awareness to pedophilia, bring awareness to sexual assault, if I could say that. And the more we talk about it, the more we normalize it, and the more people feel comfortable when a child approaches them or someone that was not able to give consent, so that they can know what to do about that. And then on the other side is becoming, when you talk about something and make it less scary, less taboo, children are more apt to be comfortable asking someone that they trust, and those trusted people are more likely to have conversations with said people.
Gotcha.
So that's why.
And what do you think has been the most interesting thing that you've learned about sex that maybe would surprise people since you kind of became a more, you kind of narrowed your scope to sexual wellness?
The most surprising thing?
Surprising, interesting, something that a lot of people might not know.
Okay, so something that a lot of people don't know is sex can be whatever you want it to be. It literally can. Foreplay starts from the minute you open your eyes in the morning. So however that looks, whether it's a kiss on the cheek, whether it is a sneak peek in the shower, whether it is a kiss goodbye, whether it is a love text, whether it's a wink, whether it is a whatever it is, whether it's self-pleasure. Sex foreplay starts the minute you open your eyes, all day long, every day. So regardless of what barriers people encounter, everyone is a sexual being, and everyone can experience sexual pleasure however they want to. Gotcha. It doesn't have to be some body part going into another body part.
Right. This question is a bit broad, but what are your thoughts on open relationships?
Oh, I think my thoughts on open my thoughts on open relationship are open conversations about open relationships. So open relationships can be incredibly beneficial, incredibly exciting, but they can also be incredibly detrimental. Communication is of utmost importance when somebody is deciding to, or people or whoever is deciding to become in an open relationship. It can be done very, very successfully. But it just requires communication. It's no different than if you were in a committed relationship and you say, today I want to have an open house. And you just decide to bring in all of these people to come check out your art gallery or your new renovated kitchen or whatever. But if you don't tell your partner or the people that live in your house that, hey, I've decided to have an open house today, it's going to be a big...
Right.
Maybe a source of conflict. And so, granted, that's on a much broader, smaller scale or whatever, but communication is so important of what is allowed, what isn't allowed, what you do feel comfortable with, what you don't feel comfortable, what's the end goal, and making sure that everybody that's participating has given consent.
Gotcha.
Open relationships have been around since the beginning of time. There was no word defining polyamory or monogamy because it was so common way back when. The Greeks, I think, were the first one to start documenting history, and there was no definition of polyamory because that was the norm. So, but yeah, that's a great question. I do have clients that are curious, like polycurious or whatever, and we just talk about that. Sometimes couples or partners don't feel safe or comfortable or know how to bring up the topic to the other partner, and so then we kind of sometimes we've role played having that topic, and sometimes both partners are there, and we have that conversation together, and I'm, the neutral party. So just kind of help them to create a safe environment where they can have those discussions and understanding how important it is for consent on both parts.
Would you say that the difference between an open relationship and a relationship in which there is cheating going on, is communication the only thing that determines what that is?
Not the only thing. It's communication for sure, because typically during an affair or cheating or whatever word we put on there is a lack of communication. And sometimes it's just that thrill that is exciting, not the actual act of doing it. So typically, communication is the main part that differentiates an open relationship versus a closed relationship where one may not know that the other is still open. So communication.
Moving on to the next question. How does anxiety affect sex? I have a lot of anxiety, this person says.
Yes, that's a great question. And yes, so anxiety. So anxiety affects everything, not just sexual health, but all aspects of all health. So we have two main emotions. We have fear and we have safety. Underneath fear, we have lots and lots of different descriptions of types of emotions. So we have anxiety, we have pain, we have sadness, we have disappointment, we have jealousy, we have all of these things. And then underneath the umbrella of safety, we have like joy and happiness and excitement and all of those things. Anxiety is a little tricky of how it presents, but to understand anxiety, the main emotion is fear. And so kind of understanding where that fear lies. And so for instance, I always tell patients, if I were to bring two snakes in this room right now and shut us in with it, if you are afraid of snakes, you are going to have fear or anxiety, and you will release a couple hormones, well, a lot of hormones, but two of the main ones that most people know about are adrenaline and cortisol. If I own snakes, and I have them as pets, I'm going to react differently, and I'm going to have a pleasure response. So I'll release several hormones, but the most common probably are dopamine and oxytocin. And so when we have anxiety or when we experience fear or something, emotion under the fear umbrella, several things happen as part of the stress response. It's something called fight or flight, which a lot of people are more familiar with that term, but it is a stress response. And so when you have, like if somebody were to come in right now and say the building's on fire, we're both going to have a stress response. One of the first things that happens is our liver produces more sugar, our liver produces more cholesterol, our pancreas produces glucagon, our calcium gets leached from our bones and goes to our blood vessels so that they constrict, and that can raise our blood pressure, can raise our heart rate, all in an attempt for fight or flight. So when someone has an imbalance of fear over safety, and we have to have fear, like we cannot live in a world without fear, because fear and our stress response propels us to do better. If we didn't have fear, we would never learn to walk, talk, drive, all those things. We would just be big blobs. If we only lived in a world of fear where we had no safety, we would have a heart attack by the time we were one. So we have to have a balance of it. But typically when someone says, I have anxiety problems, they're a little bit off balance of fear over safety. And so understanding how our body discharges that fear or discharges that anxiety or discharges sadness or whatever, jealousy, whatever those feelings are, is to understand the human's stress response. And so one of the first, well, not first things, our body has something called an autonomic nervous system, where it automatically discharges stress all day, all night, without us even knowing it. Humming, yawning, hiccups, sweating, crying. All of those are how our body discharges stress autonomically. This is why we yawn before bedtime. We yawn so that our body can regulate our autonomic nervous system, kind of blow off the steam for the day, and then we can produce melatonin, which is our nighttime hormone, because you have to be relaxed enough in order to go to sleep. You cannot, you would never be running from a gunman and decide to take a nap, because you've got too much stress hormone, too much cortisol,
or yawn
adrenaline.
while you're running.
Right, or yawn, because it is that autonomic nervous system's response to fear and safety. And so that song, I'm a Little Teapot, Short and Stout, Here's My Handle, it's actually a nursery rhyme written for children about how important it is to discharge emotions, discharge stress. And so when I get all steamed up, hear me shout, just tip me over, pour me out. Our bodies, sometimes, often, when we have a little bit of imbalance of fear over safety, or anxiety over safety, or anxiety or sadness or whatever, jealousy, those under the umbrella of fear, when we get a little bit of imbalance and we feel like that word defines us, of anxiety, of stress, of whatever, our body will give us little signs, just like the little tea kettle when the lid starts to boil. This happens to our knees, or we start rocking, or we fiddle, or we pull our shoulders up, and so then we feel, or a lot of times, I know when I have anxiety feelings, it feels like bees are stinging inside my chest. Some people can't feel like they take a deep breath or whatever. But those are our body's way of saying our tea kettle is full and we need to tip out. And so any activity that you can do to help discharge stress is going to be beneficial for anxiety and how that affects our sex life. So if you were to pull a gun on me right now, I'm not going to say, oh, I'm kind of in the mood for some sexual health. No, because right now the main players in my autonomic nervous system are adrenaline and cortisol and some of my stress hormones. And so I know I'm going to extremes. Not a lot of people have guns being pulled on them, but over time, if we have deadlines and we have bills and we have health concerns and we have news and we have somebody cutting us off in traffic, or we have a family member that's, or however that looks, it gets piled and piled and piled and piled and piled. And so when we have an imbalance of fear over safety, it's going to be very difficult to kind of shut that off and get into the mood of sexual health when you've got all of these different stressors, or your tea kettle is overflowed. So one of the best things that I can tell patients when they feel like their anxiety is a little bit imbalanced over their safety is talk therapy, whether it's with a professional or somebody that you feel safe talking to, walking, talking, singing, journaling, any of those activities. One of the best things is any activity that involves both sides of your body. So your right side of the brain is a fear-based brain, left side of the brain is your rational, reasoning. So any activity where it engages the right and the left side of your brain will help to discharge those stresses. But yeah, it's very difficult, if you can imagine the building being on fire and then expecting to be intimate with your partner. Mm-hmm. It's like, it can't happen. Yeah. You have too much stress hormone and not enough, you have too much cortisol and adrenaline at that time and not enough dopamine and oxytocin. So just trying to get you back to kind of this level instead of this level, which is way easier said than done.
To go off of the whole thing that you were saying about balance, there was a study conducted at the University of Texas at Austin in 2010, and they were pretty much monitoring the physiological responses to erotic films in women to kind of see what the role of anxiety is. They had shown them some kind of really disturbing film before, and then they watched an erotic film afterwards, and they found that in the women that were very, very anxious after watching that movie and that were not anxious at all, didn't really, they had similar responses to the erotic film afterwards, but the ones that were right in the middle that had a bit of anxiety, they had the strongest physiological response to the erotic film, suggesting that a little bit of anxiety is almost helpful, but when you tip that scale too much, it's not going to be helpful. It also pretty much found that women that have anxiety, the connection to its impacts on sexual health are not fully understood, but the ones that they were able to find suggest that it has more to do with the distraction that anxiety causes during a sexual encounter rather than a physiological response. So if someone is anxious about something that they have going on at work or something the next day, they're going to be so distracted by that they can't fully be present in the moment, and that's the part that's the distraction element rather than I have anxiety, this is a label that I'm putting on myself, therefore I am destined to have these physiological responses or lack thereof because I have anxiety and that's just the way that it is. It seems like it has a lot more to do with the distraction of it. So I don't know, obviously as someone with anxiety themselves, I still haven't really figured out how to distract myself from the things that make me anxious, but it seems to suggest that if you are able to kind of overcome the distraction of it, of your anxiety, that the effects on sexual wellness and health would be not as severe.
Right, and everybody has anxiety. Everybody has sadness. Everybody has happiness. So it's just whether or not there's an imbalance of it. There's certainly people or clients that have anxiety that they are not able to control enough without behavioral health or without medications. But everybody has anxiety. It is part of our autonomic nervous system. It's what keeps us alert. If we didn't have anxiety, we would never slow down if a child ran out in front of us. But that act helps to kind of regulate our autonomic nervous system so that we have that spike in cortisol and adrenaline, and we have the drop where we have, in turn, the spike of dopamine and oxytocin.
Oxytocin.
So, and those spikes are great because it helps keep us aware and alert and helps us multitask, and it really does help with like critical thinking and things like that. So it does, those spikes are very, very good to have. On a second part of that, anxiety / excitement are some of the leading topics in the world of fantasy. Because sometimes when fantasy becomes a reality, it's no longer exciting. And so just the idea of, and how important fantasies are for excitement, because when you have a fantasy, you can control everything. And then when you make the fantasy a reality, sometimes, not always, but sometimes it's disappointing because then you no longer have control over every aspect of it.
And the control part is, I remember you telling me, we were talking about kind of the motivations behind some kinks that some people might describe as being violent or being really, I don't know how to put this, I guess just interesting that someone would fantasize about such scenarios, but you had explained to me that it had a lot more to do with the control, the role of control in the fantasy.
Right, or letting go of control.
Yeah.
Whether you're in control or you finally release control and let someone else control you, however that looks. But it's not black or white. I know we do try to categorize a lot of things in science and medicine to fit the mold of the majority, and a lot of our studies are for that purpose. Well, X amount of people in this controlled study, but we don't always fit into X boxes. Isn't that a gaming thing?
Yeah.
We don't always fit into a black and white box. Yeah, but every single person is unique with what triggers their fantasies, what triggers their gas pedal for fantasies, and what triggers their brake pedal for fantasies, or excitement or anxiety. So yeah.
And then I just wanted to address one submission that we got, and I will paraphrase it because the original was pretty illegible. But this person said, "Why do you keep putting weird gay stuff on Muddy River News? No one wants to see that. You're not CNN." And so I I would like to kind of, whoever that person was, thank you for your submission. I would definitely recommend checking out the last Ask Leah episode that we did. We kind of talked about the importance of pride and why it's important to keep talking about, because there's definitely still harms that the LGBTQ community is facing. Not just emotionally and culturally, but like physically. Like
what was the question?
It was, why do you keep putting weird gay stuff on
weird gay stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we should stop putting weird heterosexual stuff.
You said it, not me.
Yeah.
But
heterosexuality is making me uncomfortable. No, but
it's the same premise. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. And it is interesting to just kind of switch that framing a little bit. But
it'd be saying, why do we keep having two white women do this interview?
Yeah. Yeah.
When we are not native to this country.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this person check out the last Ask Leah episode. I would also highly recommend checking out the latest Areas of Expertise article. It is on gender and sex and the biological origins of both, because there is biological origins to gender. It is not just a social construct that is completely subjective. And we kind of talk about the difference between the two and how there are definitely more than two of both of them. So definitely check that out if you missed it. And then we also did an interview with Douglas Peterson, and she kind of explained the trans experience in Quincy, and it was a really, really captivating interview. So I highly recommend you check that out. Personally, for me, I try to constantly expose myself to different perspectives to, at the very least, strengthen any, positions that I might have. But I think that we're all better when we understand each other and when we want to understand each other. And at the very least, if you are super, super solid in where you stand on all of that, totally fine. Maybe consuming all of that will just strengthen your own position. Who knows? I don't know. But I recommend that you check them out regardless. And
thank you for your submission.
Yes. So thank you everybody for your submissions. Like I said, this is the fourth one that we've done now. So to everyone that has submitted a question or a comment or anything, we really, really appreciate it. And I feel really, really grateful that we get to use this platform to address those questions. So thank you so much. Keep submitting your questions, and don't forget, you're sexy when you know stuff. And we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.